Well, today we're starting a new series on emotions. It's a Sermon Link series, so I'm joined in the studio by Pastor Scott, Pastor Ross. Guys, we're talking about emotions. And Ross, this first sermon is yours. If you want to check out the sermons, you can do that below this if you want to listen to the full sermon. This is the small group curriculum based on it. Ross, we're talking today about owning your emotions, but before we even get into that, I think maybe we should address what we're talking about when we say emotions. Is this just for emotional people?
Yeah, people not like me, right? No, it's really, everybody has emotions. So it's not just about the stereotypical person who's like falling apart all over the place,
Right.
But everybody has emotions and they're part of being human. So we want to figure out how to make that part of our following Jesus.
Yeah, and in this first lesson, like we said, we're talking about taking ownership. So that's going to be a new concept for some people maybe who aren't very quote unquote emotional. But let's start with this thought that every human emotion is valid, you say. So we're not just talking about negative emotions versus quote unquote negative emotions versus positive emotions. We're saying that God made emotions and they're all valid.
Right, even the ones that we characterize as negative, whether it's anger or fear or sadness, those God made those too, and so those have a positive potential. Now, every emotion can be used sinfully or it can be used for good. But the emotion itself, in my opinion, the experience of that emotion is neutral, and then it's what we choose to do with it that counts.
One of the things that I'm always aware of when I read the Bible is how often you encounter emotional language. Certainly in the Psalms, you find a wide range of emotions: happiness, sadness, depression, anger, all kinds of emotions. And you see that throughout many Bible stories, even in the emotional life of Jesus. We get a lot of detail about Jesus' emotional life as you read through the Gospels. And even God himself, God the Father, the Bible uses emotional language to describe God, about God being angry, God being compassionate. And so there's this rich history in the Bible of emotional language. And one of the things I just appreciate is how emotionally honest the Bible is about people's feelings.
Mm-hmm. And that really leads, Ross, to the second point in your sermon. You say take ownership of your emotions, and you recommend two steps. Number one, you say make a habit of naming them, being honest about that. And then number two, expressing them appropriately.
Right, so what I'm talking to a lot of people who are stuffing their emotions. A lot of men maybe, or people with difficult emotional experiences in the past, so they're uncomfortable with their emotional life, and so they stuff it instead. But in the Psalms, you see David says, man, I was depressed. I am discouraged. So he's putting actually names on the things that he's feeling. He's got an awareness, and so that's what I call taking ownership of that this is what's really happening in me.
Yeah. And then not just naming them and putting them out there. This has been helpful for me to say, what is this I'm feeling? But then also then recognizing that I can express them. I need to be accountable for expressing them in a healthy way, not in an unhealthy way, right? If you don't name them, if you're not self-aware, then a lot of times stuff comes out in your everyday life, in your home, at work, that's explosive and not appropriate.
Right, you've been stuffing it for so long, it's going to burst. Now, some people, there's two sides of this, right? Some people need to learn to express their emotions. Some people need to learn to express their emotions appropriately, right? They're already very expressive, maybe very emotive in their life. They might need to learn to bound that, maybe focus it. Other people need to learn to say, hey, this is what I'm really feeling, and I need to find the right way to express that before it, like we said, bursts out at some point.
Yeah. So let's get to this third point, because I want small groups and mentors to get to the conversation. I think that's where the real life change happens. Ross, you say this: let God into your emotional life, pray about your emotions, and reflect on them instead of stuffing them. So we're talking now about kind of the spiritual side. Otherwise, this is just a self-help, topic. But really, God is interested in your emotions, and he wants you to talk to him about them.
Right, that seems obvious, but it's not obvious to everybody in our culture today that you actually just say, hey, God, I'm feeling angry right now. Or God, I'm struggling with fear right now. And we have the freedom to take these things to God, and he's not going to slap us down because we were honest about our emotions.
Yeah, I think for me, one thing that I've learned is that our emotions are they're a great guide to what's going on underneath the surface a little bit. So when you talk about praying through your emotions or talking to God about your emotions, saying, okay, so I feel angry, I feel depressed, feel hopeless or whatever it is, God, what's behind that? What's causing that? What's the root cause behind that? Instead of just acting out those emotions impulsively,
Right.
which is a negative thing, or stuffing them down, which is also a bad choice. God, what's going on below the surface? To me,
Right.
that's a path to emotional maturity.
Yeah.
So own your emotions. Use those questions below to talk about it. And also, if you want to look at Ross's sermon on this, you can listen to that below. And we have an entire category on emotions. If you, in your small group or in your mentoring relationship, want to dig a little bit deeper on this beyond this particular series.